Welcome back to Super Simple Security Principles. I'm Nick Jackson, and trust me, I want to love computers, but they don't love me back. I'm learning how to stay safe from my good buddy and master guardian, Makani. Woo! Let's go. Look, dude, this kid started geeking out at 6 years old, writing his first computer programs when he was 6. Are you kidding me? Like, let's go. He knows his security. He knows his stuff. He spends his time now teaching people like me and you how to stay ahead of the digital threats and those nasty bad guys. Hallelujah. He keeps it simple and we love it. Learn along with me each week. I'll ask the questions, make sure he keeps it relevant and simple for us. If I can do it, you can do it. So let's go. This is episode 70, Shopping Security Stacks, Phishing specifically. Okay, look, my thoughts before we delve too far into this about today's questions. Look, we're going to give you a very, very, very first step to stay safe shopping online. Look, if you pull the plastic out of your wallet to purchase anything online, listen up. The start of this episode is going to be important, so pay attention. We're going to simplify and group bad shopping websites and phishing websites. Let's go. Let's have some structure. I love structure. You betcha. It even gets better. We're going to wrap this up with a safety, I'm using your quotation marks, a safe website checklist. Let's go. It's about time. Thank you. So with no further ado, here's our questions. What's the first skill we need to stay safe shopping online? What are the 2 buckets of bad shopping websites? What are the 2 buckets of phishing websites? What is the first item on our safety website checklist? Dude, this is going to be an episode.
Yeah, well, in a series, right? Like, so this is our first, we were kind of dealing in the abstract, given the system for building a security stack. So now we're starting building our first one and, doing on online shopping. And so I agree. It's going to be really cool. And just like one of the most universally applicable set of episodes that we're doing, right?
Right. Can I tell our listeners a little something?
Sure.
Look, your master guardian likes to pick on me a little. Keeps me in the dark about some things.
I do.
Right? So this is going to be my first opportunity to learn how to actually build a security deck. Or security stack, excuse me. And so I'm excited for this, especially the fact that, because this is the one area I do really truly appreciate, that online convenience and that online opportunity, and that's within, shopping, security stacks, and phishing is what concerns me, And
Yeah.
so for me, this is awesome. So I really appreciate it. Again,
Right.
Don't feel like this is a daunting task, because I'm about to do it for the first time myself. That's all I wanted to say. Go for it, bud.
No, it's fine. Well, it just made me think, like, when you were talking, I was like, what's exactly, I was just processing what you're saying. And, right, here's how I'd restate what you just said, because I thought it was very interesting was, you hate computers, right? I mean, you don't really want to use your stuff any more than you absolutely have to. But one thing that you are grateful for, and you do willingly, is shopping, right? Because there's a trade-off online versus physical, right? There are a lot of trade-offs. And so that's one you appreciate. And I think there are a lot of people in that boat. And so anyway, I appreciate that. So for this series, one thing we're going to talk about, of course, is a bunch of different threats. Today we're going to start off with phishing, but we will talk about scamming, and straight out stealing of credit cards, for example, among other things. But and of course, we want to explore all the layers of protection, against these threats as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the kind of one of our first focuses we're going to be kicking off with is a skill that everyone needs, but one that honestly I haven't. It may be out there, but I haven't seen anyone be talking about this specific skill. Um, Even though it's really super simple in concept, but there's a lot of depth to it, and that is this: how to tell if a shopping website is safe.
Yeah.
Right? Like that just there's different techniques, different questions you can ask, different things you look for. Like, how do I tell if it's safe? Right?
Agreed. Like this is a big concern of mine. Like anybody that has teenage kids, you ask them like, "What do you want for your birthday?" or "What do you want for this, that, or the other?" And they just send you links anymore. That's all they do is they send you a link to what they want, or they send you the web page and they've got everything they want in the basket already, which is awesome. I love it. But then I'm left wondering, like, dude, I haven't even visited this website. Like, sometimes these are new stores too,
Yeah.
so again, this is so relevant that I just hope people really tune in for this one.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly the case we're talking about, right? We will be talking also about, for example, Facebook Marketplace, where, Facebook itself is a known thing, but there's some risks in Marketplace. Amazon, even, there's some things we'll talk about with the sellers and things there. But obviously, Amazon itself is one known safe, clearly not a phishing website or anything like that. But our first kind of focus is this skill of we want to evaluate a new shopping website, one we haven't shopped about, one that's not well known, one that we don't already trust. And that's going to take more than today's episode, but that's what we're going to start diving into.
Excellent. Love it.
So in the questions, I talked about that safe website checklist,
Yeah.
right? And so I kind of, if you wanted to boil it down, our approach for answering that question, this skill to tell if a shopping website is safe, is basically going through a checklist of things to look for.
Yeah.
Okay. And, as we look at each item on the list, we'll get a better and better idea if the website's safe or not.
Excellent.
And, there will be some checks, especially when we want to put these up early on for efficiency. But, if like they fail this one, and we don't need to check the rest of the list because we know it's bad, right? We
Yeah.
only keep progressing if it's, passing everything. And then, we get to the end and we say, okay, we're confident enough, we're going to, place an order here.
Yeah.
Right? That's the
Yeah,
idea.
absolutely. That makes
Okay.
perfect sense. So you get a red check mark and ditch it. Time to move on.
Yep, exactly. Yep. So before we actually get to the first item on our checklist, we're only going to get to one item today, but
Yeah.
there's a few kind of background concepts, and again, these go to our opening questions. So um, there's two kinds of buckets, and there are some, lots of little combinations and variations, but of bad shopping websites. Bucket one is phishing, and
Okay.
that's we're going to focus on today. And bucket two is scamming, which we'll come back to in future episodes.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. So
Do
so
they?
today we're gonna address specifically the bucket that's the
Phishing.
phishing threats. They're
Yep.
they're looking for information, looking to glean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and we'll go into what that means a little bit more in a minute. But the point is that the phishing website, they have a little bit different approach. A little bit like when we think of our questions we were looking at, in the 5 questions in the bulletproof stack formula, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we
Yeah.
want to be looking at the nature of the threat. And so we've got to dive into it. So it's not just a shopping website, but we can break that down further. Is it a phishing shopping website? Is it a scamming shopping website? And obviously at the get-go, we don't know what that is, but just knowing that those two types of things exist help us. And there's a lot blurrier line between like scamming and legitimate, whereas phishing, it's typically a much more distinct difference, and much worse even than scamming. So we want to, or I wouldn't say worse, but different anyway. So we want to start there. They're the easiest ones to at least do some checks on, and they just have different strategies to some degree. So
Yeah.
okay, so that's the two buckets of bad shopping websites that we talked about, phishing and scamming. Now, there's also two buckets of phishing websites.
Okay.
Okay. And the reason I want to make this distinction is so there's not confusion, because we've talked about phishing a lot before, or at least some, and not specifically in the context of online shopping, right?
Right.
So
Just more general purpose phishing, right?
exactly, right. And the one that we've talked about, and like, is if you go look up phishing things, this is where they're mostly talking about, is they're impersonating, like we have a clone of a very specific website like Gmail. It's going to be the big ones: Gmail, Facebook, PayPal, Amazon, right?
Right.
And the purpose of those is to just steal your your username and password so they can log
Right.
into your Gmail account or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but what we're talking about today, we already established before, is to a new store that you haven't shopped at before,
Right.
right? So obviously, this second bucket, like, there's no username and password for them to steal from you because you've never
You've
shopped there
never been
before,
there. Yeah.
right? Okay. So the objective here is different. They're still kind of doing the same thing. They're cloning, they're impersonating a website, but not a specific one. It's just they're pretending to look like a normal online store. That's what they're impersonating or cloning, is just the idea of a normal online store rather than a specific one that you know and trust. They're not trying to trick you into thinking that they're a specific online store that you've worked with before. Does that make
Gotcha.
sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Makes total sense.
I mean, obviously, there could be a clone of Amazon as well. So there's that still in the online shopping. But this new category that we're looking at that's a little bit different is this. So,
Yes. Got it.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the goal with this one, since it's not to steal your username and password, it's to still get your information. It's just, get your name, your phone, email, address, for shipping, of course, and especially, most of all, your credit card, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So the next thing to know is phishing websites are very short-lived. They do not stick around for very long.
Okay.
Many are for less than a day. From what I
Wow.
researched on, yeah, because, well, the reason is because there's a lot of people trying to detect them and get them shut down,
Gotcha.
right?
Yeah.
So, and thankfully, we've made a lot of progress on doing that.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so, from what I could tell, the current stats are, like, it looks like it's extremely rare for one to last longer than a month. Like, that's way at the outside,
Okay.
right?
Right.
So this is super helpful, right? Because if we can determine how new a website is, right, then we can say, maybe that's probably not safe to visit, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that brings us to the first item on our checklist. And that is to answer the question, is the website less than a year old?
Okay.
Okay. So, because for me personally, now I just mentioned that phishing was like less than a month. So why am I saying a year now? Right.
Right. That was my question, obviously. Well, not obviously, but it was a question that I had.
Yeah. So, it depends on your risk tolerance, but it's because this checklist is not going to be just for phishing, even though that's what we're talking about today, but it's applying to anything. So, scam
Okay.
websites are going to stick around longer, right? They're going to, as you
Mm,
well know, because we've taught some stories you shared with me about scam websites you've been at, and I've
yep.
researched, they stick around much longer.
Yeah.
And I mean, what, even 1 year, I mean 1 year is my absolute minimum.
Okay.
Okay. Like, for me personally, right? You can set it wherever you want. I think you're absolutely crazy if you do anything less than a month, right? But my personal recommendation is less than a year is an absolute red flag. Anything less than 2 or 3 unless they're clearly advertising and saying, okay, we're new, and like you have, I mean, there can be information you can find out about that will say, okay, it's new, that's fine. You know the person, or somebody
Mm-hmm.
who knows it, or whatever, right?
Right.
But without strong evidence that it's safe, year is where I do the hard line. And then, I'd like to see at least 2, 3, 4, basically the older the better, really.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Total.
So that's, so that's our checklist. So that leads us to the next natural thing is, how can you tell what a website's age is?
Yeah. Oh, I have no clue.
Yeah. And so we want to make this really easy. And there's actually kind of a few different ways you can measure this that we'll explore in future episodes. But today we're
Okay.
going to start with the simplest and easiest. And actually, we talked about this in episode 64. This was my story because
Mm-hmm.
it has to do with domain name registration. So I'm going to put the links in for that, right? But the simplest is to look at when the website name was registered, how long it's been registered for.
Okay.
Okay. Now, that doesn't necessarily tell you how long it's been active for, because they could just park it and then use it later, but yeah. So it's not the whole story. But if it is new, again, if it's less than a year, if it is new, then you know it's bad. If it's not, then you got to keep going down the checklist, right?
Right.
Old doesn't necessarily mean safe, I guess, is the other way to say that. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So the tool, though, is one that we built, Link Lantern.
Yeah.
Yeah, super happy with it. It's still in beta. It's linklantern.com. So pretty hopefully pretty easy to understand and spell. But there will be a link in the show notes.
Yep.
And it not only tells you the website age, but it will give you some additional links in there to click on and go to see if there are if it's a known bad website, because there are a number of services that are trying to track this, detect this, and let people look it up.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes total sense.
And then, ultimately, we want to. Anyway, there's a lot we want to do with Link Lantern, but it's there right now. It works. It does the basics. You can absolutely put in a website, and it will tell you the domain age. So
Yep.
you've got that. Anybody has a simple way. There's actually, I will also include a link in case anybody, for whatever reason, doesn't want to use our tool. There is kind of an official website that maintains the website registration records that you
Okay.
can look up at it. And
All
it has
right.
a little bit more geeky stuff. It's not designed to be quite as simple, which is why we built ours. We also wanted to put in the other information, but whatever. If you want to look anyway, I'll put that link in there as well. So,
Excellent. Excellent.
okay. So, I think that's pretty much it. I think maybe we don't sometimes we do this, sometimes we don't, but I was thinking a quick recap of this one with you.
Let's do
If
it.
you want
Let's
to,
do it.
yeah, you
Throw
run
me
through
under
it.
the bus, man. You asked the questions. Let's see how well I do.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking, run through if you can think of the main points and see, and I'll fill in.
Okay, you ready? So there are two types, or two buckets, if you will say, of bad shopping websites. Your
Yep.
first bucket is what they're specifically looking for is to phish. Take that information, specifically looking for credit card. These are new websites. We're talking about new websites. New websites that
Yep.
you're going to for the first time users. I probably should have let off with that. But then there's that. And then there's the one to where, oh gosh, what was the second bucket? Don't tell me. It was this scam website.
Yep. Yeah.
So, and then from there, we've got the two buckets of phishing websites. And there you have what I call the copycatters, the ones that try to look exactly like Amazon. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. And then you've got the other ones that we're focusing in on that are like, hey, look, we're brand new. We're trying literally to steal your information, like your credit card specifically. So
Yep.
we have a website checklist, and that is according to our master guardian. And this is my rule of take as well, because I just follow his advice to keep me safe. Is if it's under a year, okay, look, next, like,
Yeah.
and so, and then again, just because we do worry about you, and this is, I take some credit for Link Lantern because I was like, I don't know how to tell if a website's new or old or whether it's legit or not.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's designed to be very easy. I literally will take and copy links that are sent to me in an email, even if I know who they're coming from, even if I'm prepared with them, and I'll put it in Link Lantern and see, you know? So again, here's a place for you to go check real quick. How long's this website been in here? Like, how long's it been there? Year or
Yep.
less? Okay. Um, and that's the first step to our checklist. And did I miss anything?
No, no, I think that's a good recap. And I'll say I'll just add this not because you missed anything, but just I'm just excited. So like as we build through this, by the end we'll actually have a PDF or something you can download somewhere. You could see it online, both. I don't know. That'll have all the items on the checklist, right?
Okay.
We just got one today, right? But we're going to have a number of other ones, and by the end, I'm confident that you and our listeners will be able to go through for themselves and check if a website's safe. And I just I can't even tell you how excited I am about that, because this is one of the ones that I've had so many requests over the years. Hey, hey Makani, is this safe? This
Yeah.
crazy Sandy check me. And sometimes I teach them a few things, some whatever, but it's like they want a quick answer or whatever, so it's not like I'm going to spend the next 3 hours teaching them.
Right. Right.
Right, so but if I have a resource that if they want to learn, I can say absolutely, I'll look at it with you, but hey, if you want to be able to do this for yourself in the future,
Here's a
here's my
checklist.
guide. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Here's my checklist, and here's how to do the things. And so I'm really excited about putting that in the hands of people too, because it's not like super rocket science, but it's definitely not things that people are just naturally figure out on their own. Domain name, age, and how do you look that up? And anyway, there's
Right.
just a lot of things like that anyway, really excited. So
I'm pumped. I'm pumped. Hopefully our listeners are too. Like, you know, they
yeah,
should be. Like, this should be something that gets you excited,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Do we have a call to action today? Should we?
yeah, we're back to normal. No more
Yeah.
calls for help for now during this series. So
Okay.
yeah, and so I just want you to, you may not have a new shopping website that you're evaluating right now, of course, right? But that's okay. Let's practice just so it's in your brain, so you've used it. Answer that first item on the checklist as though you did. Just whatever website, even if it's one is already trustworthy. Maybe you're interested in seeing how long has Amazon been around, whatever.
Yeah.
Throw in any website, go to linklantern.com, put in that website, and see what shows up.
Awesome. Awesome.
Just
I can
so
do that.
you're ready. Yeah. Well, and obviously you've done it a whole bunch, I know. So,
Yep.
but yeah,
Hey, it's super easy from a person that's non-techie. To be perfectly frank, like I'll be honest, my first experimentation was as I would send myself YouTube links and throw them in, and then use the tool to take me directly to that YouTube. And anyways, so
yeah,
this is something super easy That said, we're going to digress a little bit. We're going to talk about next week's episode. And I don't want to say digress, but we finally get our opportunity to meet with Kim. Like, that
Yeah.
should be enough said right there. Like, I shouldn't have to say tune in to next episode. You want to meet Kim? Tune in next week. That's simple.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I reference him, but I don't know how much we talked about him, because he's my brother. In
Right.
case anybody who's listening doesn't know, he's on our, he's one of me, Nick, and Kem are the team here, the
Yep.
team bulletproof, as I call it. And, he's mostly behind the scenes, but he's been a software developer in Computer Geek as long as I have been, longer because he's older, as he'll point out, I think. But, and so, he's the one who builds our website and does, he's the one who built Link Lantern, for example. You and I contributed ideas and concepts, of course, but he's the one who actually built it for us.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's, we've had him on once before, I think, maybe a couple times. So,
yeah.
But anyway, yeah, he's going to come on and share his story of failing.
So,
yeah,
and tune in to see. So, who's the better looking brother?
That's right. Yeah, it's funny you say that too, because over the years, like when we lived together, we don't now, haven't for many years, but there was a time anyway when we had a house phone. Okay, this was years ago. People would call, and anyway, it's pretty hard to tell our voices apart for a lot of people who don't know us well. So
Yep.
That's been fun. And same with, actually, I have another brother, and like all three of us have been able to mess with people a little bit in terms of our voices. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Anyway, it'd be good times to have him on.
Yep.
Okay, I'm ready.
I'm ready. Great episode.
Are you ready to take action and wondering where to start? Get my Bulletproof My Identity Starter Kit for free. The 7 most vital layers of protection everyone needs. I'll send you one step at a time and help you if you get stuck. Just go to bulletproofmyid.com and enter your name and email, and I will send you the first step. Again, that's bulletproofmyid.com.